I just wanted to talk about a little bit of history of Jewish psychology and therapy in New York City. And it's really a difficult sort of subject because with only 10 or 12 minutes, it's almost impossible to cover. Because when you think about it, psychotherapy in New York City has been Jewish most of the time, or pretty much Jewish. Not all Jewish, but certainly when you think about it. And Jewish psychology covers a lot more than therapy and psychologists. I mean, you could include in that such important figures as, so to speak, important figures like Woody Allen and Allen Ginsberg, who are American Jewish New York City boys who have a great influence on popular psychology, and bring a lot of their stuff from the psychology. Or you can go back to the Jews in psychology, going back all the way back to 1893, where the first public presentation of psychology was, well, it wasn't actually in New York, it was in Chicago, but it was by two Jews, Joseph Jastrow and Hugo Münsterberg. But so I'm not going to be able to do a complete history, and even if you do the stuff that's only in New York, you must have at least 120 different sort of psychologists that come through New York City. Jewish psychologists come through New York City. So I'm going to talk about something which is a little bit closer to me. I consider myself a humanist coach and psychologist. I am a psychologist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a certified coach. And on my website, I call myself a humanist therapist. So I want to take one slice, just one narrow slice of psychology, and I use positive psychology in my practice, and I promote it in my teaching also. And I want to show how positive psychology today, which has been around since 1998, has its roots all the way back into the 20th century Jewish immigration from Europe to New York City, obviously through the humanistic tradition. And in order to do that, I am going to just focus on, because of time constraints, Erich Fromm, Abraham Maslow, and how that is completely parallel to Martin Seligman's new theory, a theory or structure for describing human motivation. Okay, so first of all, let's talk a little bit about how all this started to come about, because if you look at psychology in the beginning of the 20th century, certainly it was based on and concentrated on Freudian psychology, which, as we all know, talks about the motivation for behavior comes from repressed drives and emotions, and very little free will type of behavior or striving to even be good. It's actually the idea is to a sort of the medical model of let's try to get rid of the negative, the sickness, and then everything will be fine. And interestingly, what happened in the 1930s, and then with the rise of Hitler in Europe, there came over from Europe a large group of psychotherapists, psychologists. They called the Frankfurt group. They came and settled in New York. Amongst them, of course, were Alfred Adler, Max Wertheimer, Erich Fromm, and a lot of other people, right? So Erich Fromm was a psychoanalyst. He was a student of Freud. And he actually grew up in Europe, in Germany, a very religious family. He was extremely religious. He grew up learning in yeshivas, learning the Jewish religious sources, and even after he got his PhD in sociology, his dissertation was on a Jewish aspect, and even after, for some time, well, at least in his intellectual and academic pursuits, many of his writings were particularly Jewish, even after he left his own commitment to religious Judaism. But even then afterwards, he always felt himself culturally Jewish and promoted this Jewishness within him. Now, he was actually, his emphasis in humanistic psychoanalysis was very different from the humanistic trend that was going on in the United States. From the Protestant side lies in Rollo May and Carl Rogers and Tiffenberg. I can't remember, the name just go down. But he was with the Protestant humanistic, American Protestant humanistic tradition was focused on acceptance of guilt, acceptance of negativity, and understanding that whatever anybody has, it's all should be accepted and dealt with as valid and validate where they're at, and therefore they can go further. Fromm took on the European Jewish Buber type model, where the important thing was the connections and the relationships, the I, thou, ich, du paradigm that was coming from the Buberian tradition. And he brought that into the idea of that the main idea is the relationship. It's not that he said that the relationship was something which was oppressive or constraining, but rather the relationship was something which was enlightening. It was freedom. It was gave a person the ability to love. When he talked about, I read the book Art of Love when I was a teenager. It didn't help my particular romantic stuff, but the idea was a basic Jewish idea that because everybody was different and there was a joy in understanding and connecting to the differences between people. And he said joy is virtuous, and it's the sadness which is sinful. Now, if you want to take this to understand where this actually comes from, where it is going to in the new positive psychology that Seligman has recently came around. Let me just backtrack and give you an idea of the positive psychology background. Seligman has a 5-factor idea of motivation, human motivation. One is the P, second is E, the third is R, and there's M, and then A. P is positive emotions. The hedonistic factor. People do things because of it feels good. But that's not the only reason. The next another reason is engagement, E, right? And E being engagement, it means that you are completely involved in what you are doing. Such as the feeling of flow. R is relationships. People do things just in order to have a good relationship. Not necessarily feeling of the relationship itself has a value. M, meaning. You do things because of meaning. You do things because it gives a meaning in life. You become a soldier, involved in religion, in a cause. Meaning is a reason to be involved. And A is achievement. Now, interestingly, by the way, achievement is something which Seligman came up not on his own, not from his own Jewish background, or Jewish tradition, or anything else. He couldn't bring it up, come to it on his own. He got it from somebody else who came and said, "Hey, listen, Martin, you're not doing it so good. You're missing something," and he had to add it on later. Now, in Fromm's idea, of course, we have the P, the idea of positive emotion, where he talked about joy being virtuous. And E, Fromm talked about we need to be disengaged from the technical aspects of the world and from the material aspects of the world. And he actually looked at Sabbath observance towards the end of his life as a possibility of a way of involving the whole world in a pull away and disengagement from the material and to engage within in the spiritual. And on the highest level, Sabbath is actually a 24-hour meditation. Not that I know anybody is actually do that. I know of people who are able to do that. R is relationships, which is, of course, that whole idea of the I-thou relationship. M is, he talks about of meaning. And here I think that Fromm was really talking about putting meaning as a secondary idea that comes from proactive and autonomy, which there is a proactive autonomy, but therefore you actually gain some meaning. And achievement didn't seem to be part of Fromm's particular way of looking at things. The second main progenitor of the humanistic psychology was Abraham Maslow, another Brooklyn boy. Of course, his early background was not religious. It was actually anti-religious. His mother was religious, and she was a very mean and aggressive person, and he actually hated her all his life. Oh, about a year before he died, he actually mentioned that he would everything he's done was probably in reaction to his mother, and because he hated his mother, he went so far into the other direction. Some of his early influences were also those people who came from Europe. Adler and Fromm, Kurt Goldstein, another neurologist, a psychiatrist that was actually a co-editor of the Journal of Humanistic Psychology with Abraham Maslow, Max Wertheimer, and Maslow was one of those who was proud to be the only American who went regularly to Adler's weekly lectures and to Fromm's weekly lectures. So he actually was pulling in a lot of this European influence, the coming post-Holocaust, post-World War II, although many of these came before World War II, but they were obviously very well aware of what was going on. So when you look at Maslow's hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then that you can actually see how they're almost parallel to what will later become in the just in this year the 5 different motivating factors that we have now in positive psychology. Just to go over quickly, though, those five levels in Maslow's hierarchy. On the bottom you have the physiological. The second is the safety needs. The third is the needs for love and belongingness. The fourth is self-esteem, and the fifth is self-actualization. So let's look at those when you talk. And you can't really understand how he came up with this hierarchy unless you put in the backdrop of World War II. Because how do you say that you had to satisfy all your physiological needs in order to start with safety, if not with some sort of imagination that you might have in a concentration camp? I'm willing, right, to give in order to satisfy my physiological needs. I'm willing to not worry about safety. In other words, if there's only a half a potato, and you want it, and you don't eat it, you're going to die. You put it inside your jacket, because you know what? Otherwise, I know they might get killed for holding a potato. I'm still going to do it. That's a sort of a scenario that one has to imagine in order to understand this as a hierarchy. The same thing with safety. I'm not going to worry about safety if I don't have, what's belongingness important to me if I'm not going to be safe. So without that, you really don't understand how he could have possibly come up with this particular type of hierarchy. So if you want to understand this and how it developed, you can see this is exact parallel. Well, one more piece is that although today we know that there's been a huge amount of research on this particular hierarchy and a lot of stuff, and I've read a lot of this stuff, but if you want to understand it, there's probably only one way to. There's the recent research shows that they're all very important, but they're not particularly in that sort of hierarchy, and that's something which Seligman says about his. Everybody is different. There are different constellations of these P, E, R, M, and A. The positive, the engagement, the relationships, the meaning, and the achievement factors. But let's look at them for a minute. If you look at these different levels, how do they translate into modern terms? The physiological needs. We're not talking about the guy who just needs a half a potato and just to live. We're talking about somebody who's going out and spending $100 on a steak dinner. Why is he doing it? Because he enjoys the hedonistic factor. Okay? And this is the positive emotions that Seligman is talking about. When we talk about doing something for our own, just for pure pleasure, for no other reason, no ulterior motives, that's when we're talking about the physiological needs. Even if you're actually talking about playing a game on your cell phone. Safety. Well, safety is really that action, the idea of relationships. Why is it relationships? Because that is what relationships are. A good relationship, a strive for relationship is where you're going to feel safe and the ability to be intimate in that relationship. I can tell somebody what my inner secrets because I feel safe with them. That's what safety is really all about. I have people around to protect me. That's what the idea of safety is. Then the one above that is love and belongingness. But here it's not only the love, because you're getting love on that safety business, right? But it's belongingness. What does belongingness mean? I belong to a group. I am dedicated to the group of people. I'm dedicated to a cause. That's the idea. And that is what we call meaning in the PERMA and the positive psychology. The fourth one we talk in Maslow's hierarchy is self-esteem. And self-esteem, what is self-esteem? And you look at Bandura's ideas of self-efficacy. It's when you're able to do something, when you're as successful in getting things done. Well, what is that? That's called the achievement motive. And that's the A of the PERMA. And the top one, which Maslow calls self-actualization, well, that's quite an esoteric, out-of-this-world, complete fulfillment type of situation. That might be called what we can see now as engagement. When a person is engaged in something so much that it's nothing else is really important, that particular thing. So we can see that there's been some sort of continuation between and flow from those early post-Holocaust or Holocaust time thinkers through to what we have today in the positive psychology paradigm. Thank you.